Welcome everybody to the Mind, Body, and Soul TV, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios, the beautiful Rocky Mountains right behind me. We're going to have a fantastic show for you, for all of you this evening. We have a great theme. The theme is Dharma Parenting, and we are, of course, as usual, streaming on YouTube Live as well as YouTube Red and at consciousevolutionmedia.com. And our guest for this evening is Fred Travis, PhD. He is a director for brain consciousness and cognition at the Maharishi University of Management. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. And he's, of course, joining us from the great state of Iowa. I must mention that. So we have this fantastic theme, Dharma Parenting, and parenting is very close to me. But before we get into that, I just wanted to, talk a little bit about the brain. And before even we get to that, I want to take all your titles away. So all of this stuff about, director of brain consciousness, cognition, and all the other things people have called you in your entire life. If I take them all away, what's left? Who is really Fred Travis?
It's a great question.
I told you that's all I have.
Yeah. Who I am is that experience of continuity of life that goes from day to day. And experience comes and goes based on that continuity of life.
Fantastic. Wow. That's very deep. Right? It's very simple and it's very deep.
It's very simple. Yeah.
Yes. So I just want to talk a little bit about, or have you talk to us a little bit about the brain, because it's such a fascinating subject these days. Everybody wants to know more about the brain. There's all these movies that have come out. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And one of the most interesting things that I recently seen, Dr. Strange. Have you seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, how am I going to talk to you about this if you haven't seen it? So let's forget all that.
No, let's go to the brain. It's important.
No. Here's the thing. So I'm going to connect it to something. So there's a sentence that's being said in Dr. Strange, and the sentence is, "Forget everything you know." So I'm going to connect that to why. I have noticed, interestingly, so you would love to test me, Doc, because I've been for the last 12 years doing this network, and I've been exposed to all this stuff about consciousness and all the tools and all the shiny objects that we human beings have come up with. And my brain is full of this stuff. So what I want to connect that to is, why is it that when we go to a movie, you go to the movies, Doc?
I have, yes.
Okay. So why is it when we go to the movies, we are able to shut off the story, and we are able to sit there and basically become part of the movie and have a tremendous experience? And I feel that we should have learned, I'm going to change that. That's how life should be lived. And you said it in terms of who you are. The way life should be lived is one experience to another experience without judging it and telling a story about it, right? So tell me about the brain. Why is it that when we, and we can do this when we listen to good music, we can do this, whoever is doing whatever they're doing with their passion, they're able to be in it and not have the story. As soon as they're not in their passion, or not watching a movie, or not reading a book, the story starts.
Excellent. First, the brain is the interface. It's the interface between us and the world. The people viewing this are viewing it because the information is coming into their eyes, their ears. It takes about 1/10 of a second actually to get up to the brain. The ringing in your brain is let you know what's up there, what's being said. So the brain is the interface. What's happening in a movie? What's happening in a movie is it's dark, so you're not getting information from other people, other chairs, and so on. So the primary information is coming from the movie. And unfortunately, you can lose yourself in the outside movie.
Mm-hmm.
So what exists is the outside changing objects, and you've lost yourself. It is valuable because you can gain some sense of a different type of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because you identify, I was in theater for 2.5 years, and then we'd have coffee house after the
Oh,
theater.
great. Awesome.
And what the people, it really was, and what the people would do is identify with a character in the play,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would see what is the outcome of the play to that character. And then the person could reflect, is that what I want to happen in my life? So what's happening in a movie is object referral. The self is lost in the object.
Mm-hmm.
What meditation practices can do, especially those that are designed to transcend, is you actually turn the attention within. And now rather than being lost in outside, absorbed in outside objects, you become absorbed in your inner self, your universal self that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're transcending all that stuff that's in your brain, that's been filled in your brain from people you talked and read and saw, and you experience who you are when the mind settles down. In
Mm-hmm.
Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, he calls this a state of yoga, and he defines it as the complete settling of the activity of the mind. It's a state where all of the constant chatter and all of the activity of the brain and thinking and feeling settles down. But then the next verse says, and that's where the self exists. It's your universal self.
Mm-hmm. So would you believe me if I told you that I'm able to turn that off? I've been able to do that for several years now,
Yeah, it's very possible.
and it's not required for me to go to a movie or do something. And this doesn't make me better than anybody else. But for some reason, a few years ago, something happened with me, and I was able to turn the chatter completely off. There's no conversation. There's no story. Like there is none right now. There's just you and I.
So just to get this straight, when you turn it off, what is there? What is the experience?
When I turn it off, all I know is when I turn it off, there's no chatter.
Okay.
That person that I'm used to talking to me, the I, he's not there. All there is just whatever I'm experiencing, and time and space disappears.
So I'm so glad you brought this up. This is a non-dual experience.
Mm-hmm.
Only the outside object exists, but it's a non-dual experience where yourself is lost in the experience.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm talking about with transcendental meditation, when transcending, it's a non-dual experience where objects is gone and all that exists is the self. It's not the self which is a man and this experience in video and like that, but rather it's the self which is awake, alert. It's your universal self.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
by
yeah,
contacting that, yeah.
yeah, I believe that to be absolutely accurate. But so here's the thing. You mentioned earlier that when we're in the theater, in the movie theater, we lose ourselves in the objects that are in front of us.
Yeah.
So how is that different? How is that movie different from this movie? Because all we have here is
Yeah.
tons of objects. It's no different. It's a movie. This is life is a movie, right?
Uh, you could say that with hand waving, but it's a little different because obviously what's happening in the movie theater is it's light going through a plastic or some type of film, and it's putting images.
Mm.
Now that's a little different than when you go out and get in your car and drive on the freeway. The cars are real. If you tune too far to the right, you're going to create a collision.
Yeah, Fred, science is telling us that this is a holographic experience.
Um,
There is no car. There is no road.
this is it's a common misunderstanding of Vedanta when they say that what is outside is Maya or illusion. They seem to say that the objects do not exist, but actually what Vedanta is telling us is Maya is the understanding that the object is material at its essence. And what it's losing is the understanding that the object is consciousness at its essence. So You know, when you drive on the freeway, it's very real. You have to go the speed limit. You can't go too slow, too fast. When you eat, you're eating food. It's going into your body. It's a material thing, and it's fine. Again, the Maya, the illusion, is thinking that all of the stuff outside is different from myself.
So Fred, we do this also in our dreams. So how is our dreams different from this?
Dreams, it's very interesting what happens in dreams. In dreams, the brain stem active. First, it turns off the frontal lobes. You're completely shut off from the outside world. And what's activated is three brain areas. The visual system, so dreams are highly visual. The motor system, so dreams are very active. And then the third is the emotional centers. Dreams are very passionate. And it's, again, the brain is the interface. Who we are, we're not a man, we're not a woman. Who we are is that universal level of consciousness. We're getting the information from the outside world through brain functioning. In dreaming, the brain activation isn't lawful activation of objects interacting in space. It's as if random activation of these three brain areas. So we do the best we can. And we can be walking along in a dream and suddenly we're flying and we don't take notice of it. It's perfectly okay. And then we're on a beach swimming and it's changing so quickly because the brain activation patterns are changing.
Mm. So what do you think all of that has to do with the fact that ever since we were born, like I have 6 grandchildren, so I got to experience firsthand how beautiful, innocent, and full of potentiality they are, and full of consciousness they are when they are born. We haven't taught them anything yet. Their brain doesn't have any of this data that we do. So people buy into all these beliefs as we grow up. I did. I don't know about you, but I believed in all kinds of things. I mean, I was born in a communist country. And
Wow.
for a while, I believed in that because that's what was taught to me.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? That's not my truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you explain that with the brain that we get to get all this information, and then for some reason we believe that it's real?
It's a very good question, and this is getting into Dharma parenting, because the main point of Dharma
Good, because I wanted to go there. Because I could talk to you about all this other stuff forever, but we have, limited
it's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected.
The main point of Dharma parenting is first that the kids are people too. They're not objects. And the second thing is we have to understand the developmental processes they're going through. So a child is born, you mentioned a child is born. They have most of the brain cells that they will throughout their life, but they're not connected. So that means when the child is born and looks up at you, at their granddad, they didn't see your head and your neck and your shoulders. What they saw was these disconnected lights and sounds, almost like fireworks going off. And then the experience going through the brain, along with a pre-programmed change in brain maturation. What happens is the number of connections are multiplying. Over the first 3 years of life, the kid is making 24 million new connections every minute. Every minute. And as these connections multiply, their ability to see the world develops. Now, the first part of the world that they develop is the ability to see concrete objects. So by age 3, what happens is they have maximum connections between brain cells, twice that of an adult, and their sensory system is completely wired up. The fat around the links between the sensory system is called myelin, and it's speeding up information flow. So a 3-year-old can see the world, they can see objects, they can maneuver the world, and their brain, the interface, is only letting them see material conscious world. They have no sense of self. Their sense of self is completely caught up in the object. So if you have a 2-year-old who's crying, give them another toy. Their awareness is completely identified with that toy and they forget why they were crying. What happens from age 3 to teenagers and adulthood is we start to de-embed from a more expressed area and we reintegrate at a deeper level. For instance, from ages 4 to 7, what's happening is you're beginning to pick up language, and you're beginning to have the idea of an image for an outer object. This is a time for creative play. And now you give the child a present. They take the present out and they play with the box because they can imagine, oh, this box is a dinosaur. This box is a rocket ship. They give it the label and they play with it. But it's very intuitive thinking. They continue to grow, and what's happening is different parts of the brain are myelinating. 7 to 10, the left and right sides of the brain are being connected. And that's when the child can have rules to govern behavior. Rules are on the right side, the behaviors on the left side. This is a time of rule-governed behavior, and they want rules and they need rules. And at this point, they have a sense of self different from outer objects. They continue to grow from 12 up to age 25. The connections of the rest of the brain with the front of the brain gain myelin. And so now the front of the brain, which is the symbolic processor, the executive center, can take the concrete present and put it into symbolic concepts. So that's now when you can think about thinking. So now the teenager, they can come up with a concept and they completely identify with the concept. Their sense of self is identified with the concept. So they're really caught up in it. And if you tell a teenager what they're thinking is not the most beautiful thing in the world, that it's flawed, they get very angry at you. But what is happening through this time is they're no longer a slave to the outer objects. Now they're being able to have thoughts. And if you continue to have experiences, especially of transcending during this time, you can begin to transcend thinking. Because many adults become locked into that teenage.
So hang on for a second, Fred. So when is the time when the youngster decides that he is an individual and no longer connected to, or disconnected actually, from his higher self? Because I believe we do that.
Actually, in the very first days, because you don't have the brain structure to maintain that experience of higher self. You first have the brain structure to maintain outer objects, and then the brain structure to think about other objects, then the brain structure to think about thinking, and then the brain structure to be able to transcend. And at that point, you experience that part of you that's universal. It's not a cognitive act, it's actually a direct experience. But let me go back to that.
It's not that we forget, it's just we need to remember it when we later on get older, correct?
That's it.
Yeah.
And how to remember it, this type of talking, this type of show is very important because experience changes the brain, and it will motivate people to begin to think, begin to look for other experiences, begin to look for meditation experiences, to begin to look at their spiritual tradition, to begin to look at traditional understandings. But it's that desire for something more which allows them to grow. And they grow, especially if they find some technique that allows them to transcend thought. If they're doing something which allows them to think in a different way, they're just lost in that same process.
So Freddie, in the last several decades, there's one common thing that I kept hearing, which is there's something off. People say to me, there's something off. I don't know what it is, but there's got to be something more to life than what I've been doing. And I just know that, and this is how people say it. They say those words that I know there's more to life, but I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Basically, they are lost.
Yeah.
But until that point, they live their lives, because I lived it myself, being basically one with the objects. I didn't ask questions about what's the meaning of life. I didn't ask questions about, why do we call this a pen, or anything like that. I thought that everything was just naturally what it is. Although what messed me up a little bit is language, because I was born with a different language. And for example, I have a big table in front of me here, and back in my old language, the name of this thing table was a different word, and
Mm,
that threw me. It's
mm,
like, oh my God. For 19 years, I knew this thing as one word, and now somebody's telling me that that's a different word, and that really threw me off. Does that
mm.
make sense?
It does.
Mm,
And in terms of when people wake up, it's typically in the late teens. Just go back to the brain again. Remember, we have these huge increase in connections, 0 to 3. 3 to 10, the child has twice the connections between their brain cells than an adult does.
mm,
And that's when they're picking up language,
everything. Mm,
socialization, culturalization, nonverbal behavior. Beginning at age 10, there's a process of neural pruning. You actually lose connections from 10 to about 18. That's when the individuality begins to emerge. Because when you have so many connections, you're not able to have a stable mental image inside. There's too much information coming in.
mm,
As the connections drop off, it's as though you're going from 100 telephones to 10 telephones in a room. Suddenly you can control the conversation. Also, what's happening is the brain is the interface. It's also what supports our sense of self. So the sense of self in the teenager is very fragile. The brain they go to bed with is not the brain they wake up with. They're
mm,
losing about 5% of their brain connections every year. So their sense of self is fragile and they begin to ask, who am I? Typically, what they do is they look
mm,
outside because, again, their brain isn't developed enough to think abstractly. And so they identify with their peers, how they dress, how they walk, how they talk, the movies
mm,
they see, the music they listen to. Then what is happening again at this time as the pruning is leveling off at age 18, the connections with the frontal lobes, which let you see more abstractly, are developing.
mm,
So in that time from like 15 to 25, the sense of self really begins to grow.
mm,
When you become 18, 19, 20, you can begin to ask questions like, who am I? When you're 15, you can't even ask the question.
mm.
You're just really, all you can do is to get through
That's
the
funny.
day.
That's funny because I asked those questions when I was 12.
Aha. Yeah, we're talking about major general changes. Some people are faster, some people are slower.
Mm, okay.
But the key point is the brain circuits had to be in place for you to be able to ask that question.
Mm. So, do you believe that the brain is like a computer, like a chemical computer?
I believe
What
the
is the brain?
no, I believe the brain is an interface in
Mm,
terms of computer lingo. It's taking environmental energies of light and sound and touch and taste chemicals.
mm,
It's converting it into a pattern that we can understand. And then when we want to act, we act on the brain. It's as though the brain is another way to understand it. It's like a radio receiver. There's all of these stations all around us, radio stations.
mm,
How the radio is configured determines what station comes in. So we have a universal level of consciousness. How we express ourselves in time and space is determined by how the brain is functioning. And when I talk about brain, I mean more than what's between the ears. It's also the gut, it's also the heart. It's as though the whole physiology is a sounding board to bring information up to the brain where it's integrated and then
mm,
sent to us, ourselves. We decide what's there and then we act.
mm. It seems extremely complex to me, because there's probably trillions of data going everywhere in our body and between our brain, and we take it for granted. We don't pay attention to that, but there's so much happening in the background to make this even possible, like what you and I are doing right now.
It's true.
And then what's fascinating to me is people, and I've been dealing with this for 12 years. People are telling me, well, I don't know how to turn on my microphone, and I don't know how to deal with my video camera. And I'm going like, what are you talking about? Do you know what you do as a human being to even be here and have this conversation? What do you mean you can't find your microphone? What does that mean? Don't you think that's weird?
Yeah, 90% of what we do is unconscious,
Uh, yeah.
and just the top 10%. And pretty much we're on automatic, and the frontal lobes are just always awake. Is
Mm,
is the automatic response appropriate here? If yes, you just do it.
mm,
If not, it stops, it wakes up, puts attention to other parts of the visual field and so on.
It's amazing. It's just
Yeah.
there's so much going on. It's absolutely amazing.
And back to,
So coming
yeah,
back to kids.
yes.
So how this book that you co-authored with someone else. By the way, I saw on your website John Gray, um, had something to say about your
Yeah.
book there,
Yeah.
and I can't remember what it said, but we interviewed him like many times on this
Yes.
network. But
Yeah.
he's a cool guy. So in terms of parenting and in terms of kids, what because what I know about what the book is and what you're talking about in Dharma Parenting, schools are not teaching. So it's really, to me, it's absolutely revolutionary and transformational what you're teaching. So tell me what that is, so that everybody can understand. What's the difference between everybody every day is sending their kids to school? To me, it's like, oh my God, please don't send them there. That's not where you want to send them, uh, because they all being treated exactly the same, and we are all different, and we have all different passions and motivations, being a human being, and that's completely ignored in school. So tell me about that. How do you change this whole concept?
So first, this idea of the brain goes through developmental stages is being understood in education as well. So they realize you just simply cannot teach a middle school student abstract concepts. They need to
Mm,
have very concrete experiences, they have to work with objects. So this understanding is creeping into schools as well. In terms of Dharma parenting, the whole essence again of Dharma parenting is people are not objects, but they're people.
mm,
That children are people, they're not objects. And as a person, they have their own goals, they have their own likes and dislikes. At the same time, we understand that there's some general characteristics. From Ayurveda, there's body types. And there's
mm,
three major body types. And so what Dharma parenting starts with is find out your child's brain body type. Find out their body type. How do they learn? How do they deal with food? How do they act? Do they act
mm,
very focused and wanting to get something done? Or are they very scattered, going back and forth? Or are they very slow moving? Find out their natural pattern of functioning. And then,
and don't try to change that.
exactly.
Because
And
that's
know
what we're
that.
trying to do in schools. Everybody has to be the same. Oh, come on.
Some schools, yes, but mainly what they want in schools is to get some level of knowledge.
Mm,
And you can get that level of knowledge in different ways. And so long as you understand there's individual learning um, preferences, and then you can help to support that. And in terms of parenting, once you know your child's brain body type, that frees you a lot. It frees you from being completely exasperated with your 7-year-old who's always late. They just enjoy everything around them.
mm,
And it's okay. It's one of the body types. And you just
mm,
plan, okay, I have to get started 10 minutes sooner with that person.
mm,
Dharma parenting, Dharma has 6 letters to it. And we assign 6 tools to those letters. The first one I've just talked about, discover. D, discover the brain body type. The second tool is H, is heal thyself. Mothers, fathers, you need to heal yourself. You need to give yourself the time to sleep, to exercise, to good food, because only if you're nourished and healthy can you actually be most helpful to your child. The third tool, A, is attention, attention and appreciation. That we feel is the working motto of any parent. They just have to be alert to what their child is doing.
mm,
And alert not in a critical way, but in an appreciative way. Because what you're doing is you're seeing their consciousness coming out. You're seeing brain changes so they can begin to express themselves in different ways. And by being alert to this, you realize that how I have to treat them today is different than yesterday and last week. Too often we
mm,
put our child into a category and they're always 6 years of age, and that's how we always deal with them. So that's attention and appreciation. And by appreciating their steps of growth, it helps to solidify that for the child. They can begin to say, wow, yeah, I wasn't able to do this last week. I can do this now. R is routines. Routines are important in family life, to just, especially when you get more than one child. So you have routines for eating and going to bed and going to school and so on. M is managing meltdowns, because they're going to happen. And the key point of managing meltdowns is don't default to the dictator and the rule giver, but you have to remember you're the coach. That when a child's having a meltdown, they've lost it. They can't reflect. They can't control themselves. So you have to comfort them. Comforting them, what you're telling them is, I support you. I know you're having a hard time, but I support you as a person. What this does, it lets them settle down, and you change the brain state. You change the brain state where they're just completely lost it to they can begin to hear you. If you try to talk to a child when they're crying, it doesn't work. And then what you do is you get more frustrated, and then you start yelling at them, and then everything is lost.
Then you'll start crying.
Yeah, you want to. And then once you change the brain state, you can talk about consequences. The last stage, just to finish this, is adapt, is anticipate and adapt. Once you know your child's brain body type, once you've been attentive to their patterns of activity, and then you can begin to anticipate what will happen. You're going out, you're going to go shopping, and you're going to miss lunch. It's going to be 1 o'clock. One of the body types is called the Pitah body type, has a very ravenous appetite. And if they miss 5 minutes of meal, they just lose it. They get really irritable, really angry. So if you're going to be shopping till 1, put a power bar in your purse, and it's about 5 minutes to noon, give the power bar to your child. And that's anticipate. Adapt is, we can't tell everyone all the ways to deal with specific situations, but take this information and make it your own.
Fascinating stuff. So tell our viewers, how can they get the book, the Dharma Parenting?
First, you can go to our website, www.dharmaparenting.com. You can click and get the book. It's on Amazon. Also, our website, we have a quiz, which will let you find out yours and your child's their body type. And you can also, from the website, we have a number of charts you can download, and that's what are the natural recommendations for the 3 different body types. It's Vata, Pitta, and Kapha body types. Also, there's a chart which allows you to see how the body types collide. So for rest, what do the different body types need? Types of food, what is recommended, what is not recommended. And that's so important to see the dynamics of what's going on in the family.
Fascinating stuff. Well, thank you very much for sharing all this information on the network. I love what you do, and I know that you are making a difference in the world, one day at a time. Hopefully more of this will get to public schools. And I think maybe you have mentioned it, that you are meditating. These kids in the schools are meditating daily. Is that accurate?
So this is another part of this story. Dharma Parenting recommends meditation, just so you can be as part of Heal Thyself. In terms of schools, a number of schools have introduced transcendental meditation into the school. It's called quiet time. And just for 10 minutes, everything is turned off. The announcements are turned off. All of the talking in class is turned off, and you're quiet. And it has a very profound effect to let the student begin to become aware of their silent source.
That's amazing stuff. And how old are these kids when they're doing this?
They're age 10. 10 is the earliest that you can close the eyes, begin to transcend. Because at age 10, what's happened is the left and right sides of the brain have myelinated. So now you can have something specific and something general at the same time.
Extremely awesome stuff. Thank you so much for being with us. This is Fred Travis, PhD, and keep watching our shows on YouTube. The more you watch them, the more they get to the top 10. If they get to the top 10 every month, then you'll have an opportunity to be on public television and maybe even on cable television.
Oh,
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
It's great being with you, Stephen. Thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome being with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Have a good night.